Rose Garden Theater, Trump's staged war on globalism, part 2 of 7 in a series on what actually happened on April 2nd, 2025. You don't roll out a declaration of economic independence in a press release. You do it in the Rose Garden. You do it flanked by cabinet members, grinning senators, a few invited union workers in MAGA hard hats, and a row of flags that make it look like we're about to invade Belgium. April 2nd wasn't just Liberation Day, it was political theater at its most potent, not subtle, not restrained, but brutally effective. This was the first Rose Garden ceremony of Trump's second term. And it wasn't for pardoning turkeys or announcing broadband grants. It was for a tariff shockwave the White House wanted remembered like a war speech. And it was all done live on camera with charts. And it wasn't just done anywhere. It was done in the Rose Garden. That location wasn't background. It was the stage, traditionally reserved for international treaties, military pronouncements, or executive proclamations. The Rose Garden is where presidents go when they want to project unquestioned authority. Obama used it to thaw relations with Cuba. Bush used it to fund foreign wars. Reagan hosted global leaders there. Trump used it to deliver a warning to the world. No congressional fanfare, no foreign diplomats, just him and the working class. It was a declaration, not a negotiation. Trump took the podium with the kind of energy reserved for rallies and rallies alone. No teleprompter drag, just direct declarations of betrayal, injustice, and retaliation, spoken like a man who believed this was his economic Normandy. American taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it's not going to happen anymore. That's how Trump began, not with policy, with grievance, because for this administration, tariffs aren't about revenge. They're about resetting the terms, not punishing the past, changing the future. After half a century of getting the short end of the stick, the message was no more. The scene was deliberately loaded, Republican lawmakers on one side, Trump's cabinet behind him, and labor union reps lined up in the front rows like honorary witnesses. This wasn't just a signing, it was a coronation of economic nationalism, or at least the show of it. And those union guys, that wasn't random. They weren't there to fill space, they were there to signal something deeper. For decades, union leadership has aligned with Democrats, but the rank and file have been slipping toward Trump every cycle, especially in places like Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And now here they were, front row at the biggest trade policy speech in modern history. These weren't props. They were the future, because how could they not be for Trump? The left gave them platitudes, Trump gave them a manufacturing base. Then came the quote everyone remembers: "Foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream." Say what you want about Trump, but nobody else in politics talks like that. And nobody else gets working class voters to cheer for a tax policy. When he finally said, "It's our declaration of economic independence," you'd think he just signed the Constitution. Applause, fist pumps, maybe even a tear or two behind the aviators. Then came the executive order, signed on camera. Tariffs were no longer a threat. They were real, inked, and effective at midnight. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple, can't get any simpler than that. That line predictably got a standing ovation. The simplicity was the message. No Harvard Business Review jargon, no 5-point trade plan, just a gut punch to the multinational order. Trump drove that simplicity home with visual aids, literal charts printed, mounted, and held aloft. One showed a reciprocal tariff comparison between the United States and other major trade partners. The most striking figure, China, 67%. According to the chart, China imposes the equivalent of a 67% burden on U.S. goods, while the U.S. previously charged just 2.5% to 3% before Trump's policy reversal. That number included more than just formal tariffs. Trump's team folded in China's value-added tax, border taxes, and regulatory fees, a move that transformed a bureaucratic breakdown into a rhetorical sledgehammer. And here's the thing, they were right to do it. From the American standpoint, it doesn't matter whether China is using a tariff a tax or a label-making fee, the cost is real and it adds up to 67%. That's what American exporters are up against. Trump didn't blur lines, he clarified the battlefield. Another line item, the European Union at 39%, to which Trump responded with a 20% US counter on the spot. South Korea, India, and others were listed, each with their "they charge us, we charge them" comparison. One chart had the slogan boldly printed in red across the top: "They charge us, we charge them." It looked like a PowerPoint slide from a populist business seminar. Trump pointed to it and said, "This is kind of reciprocal." And no one challenged the math, not the media, not the economists, not the so-called watchdogs of fiscal reality. The press captured the moment, but not the message. Cameras clicked, pens scribbled, but nobody asked the real question: why was the stage so empty? Not in terms of bodies, there were plenty of Union jackets and MAGA hats, but when it came to actual power players from Capitol Hill, nothing. No McConnell, no Rand Paul, not even the House Speaker. What's his name again? The guy who allegedly was just exposed for being on a gay hookup app. He just praised tariffs the week before. Oh yeah, Mike Johnson. He stayed parked in the audience like a polite intern at a donor dinner. There but neutered, this wasn't a Republican production. It wasn't a bipartisan press stunt. It was Trump's show, and only Trump's. No Freedom Caucus photo ops, no Vance. This was the rare big moment where JD wasn't being astroturfed as if he has organic MAGA support. As we saw in Wisconsin the day before in the Supreme Court justice race, people will run through a brick wall for Trump, but if he's not on the ballot, they won't even look at it. So this was about Trump. There wasn't anybody trying to look tough for a Fox News soundbite. The absence said everything. Congress had made itself irrelevant. The party Trump once bulldozed now stood quietly in the crowd like a bunch of extras hoping for a walk-on line, and they didn't get one. Because this wasn't legislation, this wasn't debate, this was executive war. Trump invoked emergency powers, signed a stack of orders, and steamrolled the trade apparatus, all without needing a single vote. And the GOP let him. After decades of handing over their constitutional authority, this was their reward: a folding chair behind the cameras while history happened without them. And it wasn't just the political class that got cut out. There wasn't a single economist in sight. No Treasury stooges nodding along, no Council of Economic Advisors quoting GDP models, no Fed-affiliated lifers whispering about market signals. At least for a moment, Trump cleared the technocrats and replaced them with something real: welders, steelworkers, machinists, actual Americans who'd been gutted by globalism and never got a press pass to complain about it. This wasn't a policy rollout, it was a siege. The Rose Garden, normally reserved for staged consensus, had been turned into a symbolic battleground. And that symbolism hit hard. Because for the first time in decades, the elites weren't just out of touch, they were out of frame. Every missing bureaucrat, every absent legislator, every empty face from the class that sold out American labor for cheaper foreign junk, they didn't speak, but their absence screamed this wasn't about building consensus, it was about burning it down. This was what making America great again was supposed to be about. But behind the fireworks and fanfare was a question no one in the Rose Garden wanted to answer. Are these tariffs a long-term industrial policy, or just a pressure tactic in a larger geopolitical game? Is this economic patriotism or just a new type of hostage negotiation? Because if it's real, if these tariffs are about permanently rerouting industry in America, then this was the most anti-globalist event in recent memory. But if they're just a way to force countries to the table to make new deals or punish enemies of allies, then it's just globalism with a Trump hat on. That question waits for another article. For now, the show was over. The tariffs were in, and the crowd was told to remember April 2nd as the day America took its power back.